You may recognize my next guest from his days of playing Drake Belson on The Young and the Restless back in the 90s. Freeman Michaels has a new book out now called Weight Release, A Liberating Journey. Welcome to the show, Freeman.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
I think a lot of people at this point, we're going through Christmas, we're dealing with the food, and we're looking at New Year's resolutions. And weight loss is typically pretty high on that list.
It's usually number one.
And why you have this whole philosophy about stopping, not looking at it in terms of a weight loss. Why is that?
Well, the thing about loss is when you lose something, you're going to want to find it or replace it. Because the truth is that the weight or the eating patterns have actually served a valuable purpose. Sometimes carrying extra weight is a form of protection, a way that we can defend off unwanted attention. Sometimes it's the eating patterns are a way of coping. It's how we cope with stress, anxiety, emotions. So that's the idea that most people, when they look at themselves and they decide to go on a diet, it's because they don't like themselves. And negative motivation really doesn't work. It's a bad. It's not a good. It's not a foundation for a positive change, at least. And so yeah, go ahead.
So what should people do then? Because that's something that's been ingrained in us for ages. Is talking about diets and weight loss. Is how do you battle that?
Right. Well, it starts with the notion of wants and needs. What happens is people's wants are out of alignment with what they really need. Let me illustrate this. So the idea is you have a hard day, right? And perhaps you want ice cream, okay? But that's not really what you need. What you need is comfort. What you need is encouragement or a whole myriad of things that are really linked to the deeper need. And what's happened is the food is a superficial way. It's a way of sort of masking the issue, but it doesn't really get down to what we really need, and it's a pattern of behavior that sort of feeds on itself.
So and then you're talking about kind of the negative attitudes and flipping them into positive attitudes, which is, it sounds so simple, but that's a very complex process.
Well, it is, and part of it is our programming. See, from an early age, we're really sort of instructed in negative terms. I mean, you think of school-age kids getting a lot of red pen marks on their papers, but they don't necessarily get a lot of positive encouragement. And so often, it's a real challenge to flip to where we recognize what it is we do want and start to put our attention on that. So what I've designed in my book is it's an intention process. So intention, the word intention just means a held thought. It's what we focus on. And again, going back to looking in the mirror and seeing something we don't like. Well, that's not what we want to focus on. What we want to focus on is the things that really feed us. And forgive the pun, it's really a fulfillment issue. It's finding ways to meet our needs in self-honoring ways. So if a need is for comfort, then we replace a bag of Cheetos with a bath or meditation or something that is self-honoring, but it's made with a consciousness. Meaning we're holding in our minds that we're meeting a need. So we're actually doing a sort of inventory and recognizing when something's coming up for us. So instead of going to food to cope, we say, wow, something's coming up for me. And we have this plan, okay? And the plan, I call them practices, actually, because you have to practice something for it to become a habit. And we design a series of self-care practices that we can actually practice to interrupt that negative pattern.
One of the ideas that you put forward as well is the whole idea of meal affirmations, of saying something before you eat. Does that actually work?
Of course. And it's interesting. It's been scientifically proven that meditation has a profound effect on the body. Just breathing, just slowing down. Again, bringing into our consciousness what we're actually doing. You see, people who are overweight, and I was overweight for many years. I mean, I sort of went from extremes. In my soap opera days, I was actually underweight, which we can talk about as well. But then I went to the extreme because I deprived myself for so many years that when I came out of it, I overate. And I was definitely an anxiety eater. So slowing down for me is really important. And the idea of affirmation is staying in the positive. It's a positive relationship with our body. Going back to the mirror. We look in the mirror, we have a negative relationship. And when people make choices out of a negative relationship, it actually fuels the negativity. I call it feeding the beast. So what they do is they go on some extreme diet or some extreme exercise program because they want the pounds off now. Well, that's not sustainable, So I want people, when they think of even exercise, it's like, what do you like to do? Because if you do something you like to do, that's sustainable. You can do that for the rest of your life. But if you go to a gym and you pick the roughest trainer you can pick, and and you go through this horrible experience of just beating up your body, sorry, but you can't do that for the rest of your life. I know. I was in the gym for years abusing my body, quite literally. I mean, I literally injured myself back when I was in my soap days because I was trying to stay at an imagined weight that I thought was the right weight, or my agent told me was the right weight, whatever. I mean, I had all this pressure on me to stay thin, and it wasn't my natural weight.
With all this in place, with the food affirmations, with the positive ideals and everything, do you still struggle? I think, are you still human? Do you still have trouble, especially around the holidays?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm really human. In fact, I just wrote a blog recently, which will come out next week on my website, the Service to Self website, about how evenings are the hardest time for me. I mean, they're really challenging because what happens at the end of a long day is, see, I grew up being rewarded with food. If I did something good, Mom or Grandma would say, "Oh, sweetheart, you did great. Let's go have pizza. Let's go have ice cream." All this thing towards getting to dessert, and I get dessert, and so at the end of a long day, I want dessert. I want my little treat. That was tough. I made it through a long day. So what I've had to do is really recognize again that desire to have something that's special. And I've found some wonderful things that are special in my life. And see, with intention, I actually consciously project onto whatever the item is that this is special. And it's that, what you were talking about, the affirmation, I make it special.
So what kind of things are special to you then? What do you use? Because,
if you...
one. Okay.
Especially during cold weather, hot chocolate. I mean, hot chocolate has 100 calories or 110 or something. So, I mean, you can have that as a special treat. And again, it's the psychology. It's setting yourself up for the reward. And even finding things that aren't food-related to reward is very good. But specifically, I actually find myself having, these kind of cravings, which again relates to wants versus needs. So I have to kind of check in. But that, and even hot things like a tea, there's a spicy tea I really love. And again, the love is the energy I put into it. And so I've made a whole series of self-honoring choices to get through the evenings. And yet sometimes I, quote-unquote, slip up. But see, those in the past, I used to beat myself up. Now those are opportunities. I've shifted my consciousness, again, going towards the positive. There are no more mistakes in my life. They're just opportunities to learn something.
Author of Weight Release, A Liberating Journey, Freeman Michaels. Thank you so much for joining us.
Stephanie, thank you for having me.
Michaels, an ex-soap opera star. He played Drake Belson on The Young and the Restless. That was back in the mid-'90s. His book out now, as I mentioned, called Weight Release, A Liberating Journey, just in time if that's on your New Year's resolution list. All about stopping, about thinking about weight in terms of loss, because in his mentality, if you focus on just losing the weight rather than what the role is that food plays, you'll feel deprived and you may actually end up finding that weight again.